My name is Riley Richardson, and I was 28 when my father used a fundraiser microphone to turn my final paycheck, my bonus, and my little brother's college deposit into a public accusation. He did it under warm lights, in front of donors, neighbors, relatives, church ladies, and every person who believed the Richardson family business was built on service instead of control. He smiled first. That was the part people missed later. My brother Camden stood beside him in the gray suit I had paid to have tailored, wearing the clean expression he always wore when my work was about to become his achievement. My Aunt Marcy sat in the front row with both hands folded over her purse, already warning me with her eyes not to make a scene. Noah, my 17-year-old brother, was in the back row, trying to disappear inside his jacket. Then my father leaned into the microphone and said, "Maybe you should try being grateful before accusing your own family." Everyone turned to look at me. I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not beg that room to believe me. Because I already knew 3 things my family did not know. The grant draft they used to make Camden look brilliant still had version history. The payroll record they changed after I asked to be paid still had the original timing buried in the export. And the probate filing they were rushing through to move family assets into Camden's control had copied one sentence from a document I had written before my brother ever learned how restricted funding worked. That night, my father thought he had humiliated me into silence. He had no idea silence was the only reason I could hear the paper trail getting louder. Don't decide too early, the paper trail changes everything. For most of my life, I was not the favorite child. I was the useful one. Camden was the story. I was the structure holding the story upright. My father, Howard Richardson, ran a small community development company with a polished public face, youth programs, housing workshops, charity dinners, and grant-funded projects that looked clean in photographs. Camden carried the smile. Aunt Marcy carried the guilt, wrapped in perfume and softness. I carried the documents. And Noah carried the one part of the family they were never supposed to use as leverage. He was quiet, kind, obsessed with maps and old trains, and the only person in that house who ever asked if I had eaten. By college, I had become my father's unpaid second brain. I wrote donation letters, cleaned grant narratives, rebuilt budgets, and rewrote Camden's talking points so he could stand in front of donors and sound like he understood the programs he claimed to lead. At first, I told myself it was normal. Family helps family. That was the phrase my father used like a house key, and it opened every door where my time disappeared. When I became a grant writer, the work gave me a language my family could not completely bend. Grants have rules, budgets have limits, reports have dates, a program either promises something or it does not. That was why my father started watching my file names. The first time I saved a draft with my initials, he called within 10 minutes. "Why are your initials in the file name?" "So I can track which version is mine," I said. He paused. "Yours?" That one word told me the truth, before I was ready to hear it. Later, Camden used my proposal language in meetings, and called it family teamwork. Aunt Marcy told me to take it as a compliment. My father told me not to put little ownership flags on family work. All of that would have stayed ugly but survivable, if the damage had only landed on me. Then one email about my final pay turned into a threat against Noah's college deposit. That was when useful stopped being a role, and became a warning sign. That was when useful stopped being a role, and became a warning sign. By the time I was 28, I had finally made the mistake my family never forgave. I asked to be paid properly. It was not dramatic. I did not storm into an office. I did not threaten anybody. I sent a clear email on a Thursday afternoon because I had tracked the hours I spent on the new community education grant, the donor presentation, the impact report, and the program budget revisions my father had asked me to complete before the annual fundraiser. I wrote that I was happy to help transition future work, but after the fundraiser I needed a formal contractor agreement, or I needed to stop doing business tasks for the family company. I also asked about the final consulting payment from the last project, and the performance bonus my father had promised if the grant package came together before the donor review. The email was calm. Too calm, maybe. I read it 5 times before sending. My father replied 9 minutes later. We will discuss this as a family. That sentence was never good news. Camden called me after work. I did not answer. He texted. You really sent Dad an invoice like he is a stranger? Then another. This is why people think you are cold. Then another. You know the fundraiser is next week. Great timing. I stared at the messages while standing in the grocery store aisle with a basket full of eggs, rice, and the cheap coffee I bought when I was trying to save money. My first feeling was not anger. It was embarrassment. That is how deeply trained I was. They had withheld money they promised me, and I felt embarrassed for asking. Noah called later that night. He did not usually call. He texted pictures of model trains or links to campus tour videos. When his name lit up on my phone, I answered immediately. Riley? He said. His voice was careful. What happened? I asked. Did I do something wrong? My stomach dropped. No. Why would you ask that? Dad said everything is tight because people are making demands. He said my deposit for Northbridge might have to wait. Northbridge was a small engineering college 2 states away. Not famous, not flashy. Perfect for Noah. He had been accepted early, and I had cried in my car when he sent me the screenshot. The deposit was not huge in the world of grown-up money, but for Noah it was the difference between claiming a future and waiting for my father to decide whether he deserved one. I had been helping him quietly. I had sent him money for application fees. I had reviewed his essays. I had reminded my father about deadlines because Noah hated conflict, and my father treated every financial obligation like a loyalty test. What exactly did Dad say? I asked. Noah hesitated. He said if the family business gets hurt, everyone gets hurt. There it was. The third breadcrumb was not a document. It was my brother's voice trying not to shake. I told Noah I would figure it out. He said, please don't fight with Dad because of me. That broke something cleanly. I had swallowed a lot when the damage stayed pointed at me. I could explain it away. I could call it pressure, old habits, family dysfunction, whatever gentle label made it easier to keep showing up. But threatening Noah's deposit because I asked for earned pay was déterré. That was not pressure. That was leverage. The next morning, I asked our family bookkeeper, Denise, for a copy of my contractor payment records. Denise had worked part-time for my father for years. She was not family, which meant she was usually kinder, because she had no inherited reason to be cruel. She sent a short reply. You may need to ask Howard. Some categories were updated after your resignation notice. After my resignation notice. I read those 4 words so many times they stopped looking like English. I had not resigned from a paid employee position. I had set a boundary around unpaid and underpaid work, but inside the family business, language bent itself around my father's needs. If I was family, they did not have to pay me. If I asked for pay, I was suddenly a contractor. If I stopped working, I had resigned. If I resigned, they could say I forfeited what they owed. That afternoon, I opened the shared folder. Most of my drafts were gone. Not deleted completely. My father was not careless that way. They had been replaced, renamed, moved into folders with clean titles like Camden Program Strategy and Leadership Drafts. The current grant submission draft had Camden's name in the header. The impact language was mine. The budget notes were mine. The outreach timeline was mine. Even the awkward sentence about removing transportation barriers, the one I had rewritten at 2 a.m. while eating toast over my sink, was mine. But the file name made him look like the architect. For a few minutes, I just sat there with my hands in my lap. Then I did the thing my family always underestimated. I stopped reacting, and I started checking. I opened version history. There I was. RR Youth Workforce Draft V1. RR Budget Narrative Notes. Riley edits after donor call. Riley. Final language before board packet. Camden's name did not appear until days later, after my father had asked me to send a clean version. A clean version. I laughed once, but it came out like air leaving a tire. The next file I checked was payroll. I did not have access to everything, but I had exports because my father used to ask me to review numbers for grant reports. He trusted my labor more than he trusted me. That mistake saved me. The old export showed a line labeled Richardson Consulting, Final Grant Package Support. The new export had a different label, Family Reinvestment Adjustment. The amount was similar enough to make my skin cold. My bonus had not disappeared. It had been renamed into something that sounded voluntary. Then I found a note attached to a temporary holding account, a note I was probably never meant to see because it sat inside an old budget workbook. NOAA Education Deposit Timing TBD pending liquidity after transfer. Transfer. That word was the fourth breadcrumb. I did not understand the whole thing yet. I only understood enough to know my father was moving money around while telling my younger brother that my request for pay was the reason his deposit might be delayed. When I called Aunt Marcy, she answered on the second ring. I asked her directly whether my father was using Noah's deposit to pressure me. She made a soft sound, almost sad. Riley, you have to understand how this looks. I said, that is not an answer. It is all connected right now. Your father is trying to secure things before the paperwork changes. What paperwork? Another pause. Then she said, too quickly, you need to talk to him. What paperwork, Aunt Marcy? Do not take that tone with me. There she was. The pillow moved just enough to show the hand underneath. I did not call my father. I sent one more email. Please provide confirmation of outstanding compensation, the status of the promised performance bonus, and written confirmation that Noah's education deposit is being held separately and will not be delayed or used as leverage in any business dispute. My father did not respond. Camden did. You are spiraling. Then my father sent a family group text. Riley has chosen to attack the business during an important week. We will not feed drama. Everyone stay focused on the fundraiser. Noah left the group chat 5 minutes later. I stared at his name disappearing from the screen, and felt something settle in me. Not rage. Not revenge. A kind of cold permission. They had spent years teaching me that silence meant abandonment. If I did not defend myself, they won. If I did not answer every accusation, the accusation became truth. If I did not chase them, they would leave me outside the family circle, until I apologized for being hurt. But that week, silence changed shape. I did not answer the group text. I did not answer Camden. I did not answer Aunt Marcy when she sent a heart emoji followed by, "Please do not make your father sick over this." I printed everything. Not because I had a grand plan. I did not. I printed because paper made panic smaller. I printed the grant draft version history. I printed the payroll exports. I printed the emails. I printed Camden's texts. I printed the holding note about Noah's deposit. I printed the public fundraiser program where Camden was listed as Director of Community Grant Strategy, a title he had invented for himself sometime between stealing my language and ordering new business cards. At the bottom of the pile, I wrote one sentence on a yellow sticky note. They did not fire me. They erased the hours after they used them. That was the first honest thing I had written for myself in a long time. The fundraiser was held in the old Whitcomb Hall, a brick building downtown with high windows and terrible acoustics. My father loved that place because it made every event look historic, even when the folding chairs wobbled and the coffee tasted burnt. I almost did not go. That is the truth. There is a version of this story where I stayed home, mailed the documents, and protected myself from the sound of people clapping for my brother. Sometimes I wish I had been that version of myself. But Noah was going because my father had told him the event mattered for the college deposit. I could not leave him there alone. So I put on a navy dress, low heels, and the calm face I had learned from women in offices who got interrupted and still finished the sentence. When I walked in, the room shifted. Not dramatically. Real life is rarely dramatic in the way movies are. People did not gasp. They just looked away, then looked again. Camden saw me first. He was standing near the donor table, laughing too loudly with a man who owned 3 dental offices, and liked to be called a community builder. My brother's eyes dropped to the folder in my hand. Then he smiled. That smile meant he thought the folder made me look desperate. Aunt Marcy intercepted me near the refreshments. "Sweetheart," she said, "not tonight." I looked at her. She wore pearl earrings and a burgundy jacket. She looked like the human version of a donation envelope. "I am here for Noah," I said. Her face tightened. "You need to be very careful. Your father is giving remarks." "I know. Then be gracious." Huh. That word almost made me laugh. Gracious. In my family, gracious meant bleeding quietly so no one had to mop. Noah found me near the back wall. He looked younger than 17 that night. His tie was crooked, and his hair was too neat, like someone else had tried to make him presentable for a picture. "Are you okay?" he asked me. I wanted to lie, but I could not do it to him. "No," I said. "But I am steady." He nodded like he understood the difference. My father began speaking at 7:15. I remember the time because I checked my phone when he walked up, and later that timestamp mattered in a way I did not expect. He thanked the donors, he thanked the volunteers, he thanked Aunt Marcy for being the heart of the family. He thanked Camden for bringing young leadership and modern vision into the work. Then he paused. People leaned in because my father knew how to use silence as theater. He said, "Some weeks test what a family is made of." My stomach went still. He did not look at me at first. He looked over the crowd, like a man carrying a burden with dignity. "There are people," he said, "who receive love, opportunity, and trust, and then mistake that trust for entitlement." Noah turned toward me. I shook my head once, barely. My father continued. "Recently, our family has faced accusations from someone who should know better. Someone who was welcomed, supported, and given every chance to be part of something bigger than herself." Aunt Marcy closed her eyes as if praying. Camden stared straight ahead, but his mouth curved. Then my father looked directly at me. "Maybe you should try being grateful before accusing your own family." There it was. The room changed around me. Not everyone knew what he meant, but everyone knew who he meant. That was enough. Public humiliation does not need details. It only needs a target, and a crowd willing to understand. My father kept going. He said the business would not be distracted by selfishness. He said Camden would continue leading the youth workforce initiative. He said the family would protect its mission from bitterness. People clapped because clapping is easier than asking why a father is using a charity stage to discipline his daughter. I stood still. My face burned. My throat hurt. My hands wanted to shake, so I held the folder against my ribs until the edges pressed into my skin. When the applause faded, Camden stepped up and said, "Thanks, Dad. Some of us are focused on the work." A few people laughed. That was the moment I almost broke. Not when my father accused me. When people laughed. Because laughter turns cruelty into permission. Noah moved toward me, but I shook my head again. I did not want him pulled into the center of the room. I walked out before dessert was served. In the hallway, I heard Aunt Marcy behind me. "Riley." I turned. She looked angry now. Not worried. Angry. "You could have handled this privately," she said. I looked down at the folder, then back at her. "I tried. You sent emails like a stranger." "I sent emails like someone who needed a record." Her eyes flickered. It was small, but I saw it. People who depend on confusion hate records. She lowered her voice. "Do not make your father regret trusting you." That sentence told me more than she meant to. Trusting me with what? Drafts, payroll, Noah's deposit, the transfer she had mentioned and then pretended not to mention. I went home, and did not sleep. At 2 in the morning I opened every document again. This time I was not looking for proof that they had hurt me. I already had that. I was looking for what they were protecting. The answer was buried in a folder labeled Estate Admin, which should not have been in any shared business drive. It contained old scanned documents, property summaries, and a recent draft filing connected to my grandmother's estate. My grandmother had died 2 years earlier. Her house sat on land behind the original family office, and my father had talked vaguely for months about consolidating assets so Camden could step into leadership cleanly. I had avoided asking questions because estate language made me feel like a child at the adult table, and because my father had a gift for making curiosity sound like greed. The draft filing was not complete. I want that clear. I did not uncover some perfect dramatic confession. Real documents are usually not that generous. But there was a section describing program assets, property use, and projected grant-supported growth under Camden's leadership. The language was familiar. Too familiar. It pulled directly from my grant submission draft, including the part where I had described community education space as restricted to program use and donor expectations. Only in the estate document, the language had been cleaned until it made Camden look like the planner, the business look stable, and the asset transfer look urgent. At the bottom of the draft, there was a note. Need clean final before review. Avoid loose compensation issue. Loose compensation issue. That was me. My unpaid work, my renamed bonus, my final pay, and maybe Noah's deposit had become loose ends in a story my father needed clean before anyone outside the family looked too closely. I sat in the blue glow of my laptop until sunrise. Then I made coffee and did something that felt almost unnatural. I did not call them. I built a timeline. Not a legal argument, not a revenge plan, a timeline. Date 1. Father asks Riley to remove initials from draft file names. Date 2. Riley creates first grant draft. Date 3. Camden requests clean copy. Date 4. Riley sends final grant package. Date 5. Riley emails compensation boundary. Date 6. Payroll category changes. Date 7. Family group text accuses Riley of attacking business. Date 8. Fundraiser program credits Camden. Date 9. Father publicly accuses Riley. Date 10. Estate draft references, grant language, and unresolved compensation issue. A timeline is powerful, because it does not care who sounds more confident. By 8:30, I had the folder organized. By 9, Camden started calling. I let it ring. At 9:07, he texted, "You embarrassed yourself last night." At 9 to 10, another, "Dad is being generous by not telling people everything." At 9:14, another, "If you have documents, you better be careful how you use them." I saved screenshots. At 9:30, my father called. I let that ring too. At 9:32, Aunt Marcy sent a voice message. I listened once. Her voice was soft again. "Riley, sweetheart, I know last night felt hard, but your father is trying to keep everything together. The transfer has a lot of moving parts, and your timing is creating confusion. Please do not take paperwork out of context. You are not a lawyer. You are not helping Noah by making enemies inside the family." There it was again. The transfer. Noah. Paperwork. Not once did she say I was wrong. That afternoon, I drove to the courthouse. I did not go in as some fearless avenger. I parked for 20 minutes and considered leaving. I kept thinking of my father's voice through the microphone. I kept hearing people laugh after Camden said some of us are focused on the work. I kept seeing Noah in the back of the hall, trying to disappear inside his jacket. Then I thought about the note. Noah, education, deposit timing, TBD, pending liquidity after transfer. I got out of the car. At the clerk's window, I asked if there was a public filing related to my grandmother's estate and the Richardson family business transfer. I kept my voice even. I did not accuse anyone. I did not tell the whole story. I gave names and asked what could be viewed. The clerk was a woman with silver hair, square glasses, and the kind of face that had survived decades of people demanding exceptions. Her nameplate said Miss Alvarez. She asked my relationship to the estate. I told her. She asked for identification. I gave it. She looked up the filing, clicked through something, and then paused. "How do you spell Camden?" she asked. I spelled it. She looked at one screen, then another. "Are you listed anywhere as part of this program plan?" My pulse jumped. "No," I said. "I do not think so." She adjusted her glasses. "Interesting." That word in a courthouse hallway does not feel like curiosity. It feels like a door unlocking somewhere behind you. I asked, "Why?" Miss Alvarez did not tell me anything she should not. She did not give me legal advice. She did not make promises. She simply turned one page toward me and pointed to a paragraph. "Because this language appears in the filing summary under Camden Richardson's supporting program plan," she said. "But the uploaded draft note references an earlier submission file with your initials." For a second, I could not speak. The file had followed them there. Maybe through carelessness. Maybe because Camden had uploaded the wrong support document. Maybe because my father had rushed. I still do not know, and I will not pretend I know. But the system had seen what my family had spent years training me to ignore. I said, "I wrote the original program plan." Miss Alvarez looked at me for a long second. "Then you may want to keep your records organized," she said. No movie speech. No victory music. Just one tired clerk, one sentence, and a folder that suddenly felt heavier in my hands. Before I left, Miss Alvarez slid the page back into the folder and said, "Keep your copies clean." That was all. But on the drive home, Camden called 11 times. Not one. Not two. 11. By the time I reached my apartment, my access to the shared business folder had been removed. For 1 second, the screen went white in my head. Then I remembered the export I had made at 2 in the morning. The file they locked me out of was already in my backup, time-stamped before the permissions changed. That was the first tension layer. The second came 7 minutes later. Denise, the bookkeeper, sent one sentence from an email account I had never seen her use before. "Do not rely on the latest payroll export. They corrected it again after the fundraiser." I read it twice, and the room tilted. My family was not just hiding old records now. They were still changing them. Then I checked the court upload index one more time, and saw a file name I had almost ignored, RR Budget Narrative Notes. It appeared under Camden's support documents. My family had not only copied my work, they had carried my name into the place where their clean story needed to survive. That was the first time someone outside my family looked at the paper and did not ask me to be quiet. I walked back to my car and cried for 4 minutes. Not because I was weak. Because being believed by a stranger can make you realize how long you have been starving. After that, I rebuilt my life in small, unglamorous ways. I took freelance projects from people who did not share my last name. I made one rule: no written scope, no work. I bought a resale desk, changed my passwords, backed up the timeline, and stopped treating panic like proof that I was wrong. I also kept texting Noah. Not about the fight. Not about documents. I sent housing reminders, campus links, and a picture of a ridiculous train-shaped mug I found online. Late one night, he texted one sentence. "Is it my fault?" I called him immediately. "No," I said. "Not 1 inch of this is your fault." He went quiet, then asked what the records said. "They say I did work they did not want to pay for. They say money moved after I asked questions. They say Camden took credit for something he did not build. And my deposit." "I am watching that part," I said. "But you are not a bargaining chip. You hear me?" That call became the line I would not cross backward. I could still be guilted when the harm was only mine. Once Noah asked if he caused it, I stopped softening the truth for adults who knew exactly what they were doing. If you've ever been treated like family labor until you asked to be paid, type ME. The next week was when my family stopped pretending this was only hurt feelings. My father called 3 times, then sent one email with the subject line "Family Unity." It said the fundraiser had gone well despite my behavior, and that I needed to stop creating confusion around compensation. Creating confusion meant asking why my pay had been renamed after I asked for it. Camden tried a different angle. He sent a screenshot of the fundraiser program with his title highlighted: Director of Community Grant Strategy. Under it, he wrote, "This is public now. Be smart." Aunt Marcy sent a voice message telling me not to punish Noah by making enemies. That was the pattern. My father used authority, Camden used status, and Marcy used Noah. Before, that triangle would have trapped me for weeks. This time, it only helped me organize the timeline faster. Then the second tension layer hit. Denise sent another message, shorter than the first. Howard asked me to prepare a revised payment explanation. I am not comfortable with it. She did not attach the explanation. She did not have to. If Denise was getting nervous, the story inside the office was starting to crack. That was when I understood the fight had moved from family guilt to document control. It was not really about credit. I wanted my name back, yes, but the center had moved. This was about a father turning money into obedience, a brother taking whatever made him look chosen, and a teenager learning his future could be delayed whenever adults needed leverage. On the second Tuesday after the fundraiser, a donor named Elaine Porter emailed me. She was not a major donor, just a retired school administrator who had supported the youth workforce program for years. She had always been sharp in meetings, the kind of woman who could find the weakest sentence in a proposal before anyone finished pouring coffee. Her email was polite. Riley, I hope you are well. I noticed some familiar language in Camden's remarks and in the program summary distributed at the fundraiser. Were you involved in drafting the workforce initiative materials? I stared at it for a full minute. Then I replied, yes, I drafted the original grant submission materials and supporting program narrative. She wrote back 20 minutes later. Thank you. That is what I thought. But that was enough to make my father call 6 times in a row that evening. I did not answer. At 9:02, he sent an email. Do not contact donors. I replied. A donor contacted me. I answered truthfully. He replied. You are trying to destroy your brother. I typed 3 different responses and deleted all of them. Then I wrote, Camden's reputation is not my responsibility to maintain with false information. My hands shook after I sent it. Agency does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like nausea with better posture. The next morning, Camden posted on social media. Proud to lead the next chapter of Richardson Community Works. Ignore noise. Real builders keep building. The picture showed him at the fundraiser, one hand on the podium, my father behind him, both of them looking noble in bad lighting. For 1 second, I wanted to post everything. The version history, the payroll exports, the texts, the holding note, all of it. I wanted every person who had clapped to feel ashamed at once. Then I imagined Noah seeing the family implode online before he had a safe place to stand. I closed the app. That restraint saved me later. My father knew how to perform wounded dignity in public. If I had exploded online, he would have used my anger as proof that the documents came from bitterness. Instead, I let Camden's post sit there like bait I refused to bite. The next development came from the courthouse. I received a notice that the asset transfer review had been delayed pending clarification of supporting documentation. That sentence was dry enough to be invisible to anyone not living inside it. To me, it was thunder. The notice had a second line that made my knees go weak. Additional clarification requested regarding supporting draft source and compensation timeline. Supporting draft source. Compensation timeline. Those were sterile words, but underneath them was the exact shape of the lie. For the first time, my family could not explain me away as dramatic without explaining the documents too. Not because I thought I had won, because it meant my father had not. That should have been the pause where I breathed. Instead, the third layer hit before dinner. Miss Alvarez left a voicemail from the courthouse number. Her voice was careful, official, and impossible to read. Miss Richardson, if you have original copies of any supporting drafts referenced in the filing index, please keep them in their original form. Do not alter, rename, or overwrite anything before review. I stood in my kitchen with the refrigerator humming behind me, and played it again. Do not alter. Do not rename. Do not overwrite. Those were not emotional words. That was what made them terrifying. 5 minutes later, Camden texted me a screenshot of the same court notice with one line circled. Clarification requested. Under it, he wrote, "You realize this can delay Noah, right?" Who? For a moment, the old trap opened under my feet. If I kept going, I was selfish. If I stopped, I was loyal. If Noah got hurt, it would be because I refused to make the adults comfortable. Then Noah texted me from his bedroom. Dad said maybe I should defer a semester until things calm down. I put the phone face down on the table and stared at the folder. That was the moment I stopped thinking of the documents as proof for me. They were a door for Noah. So I did one more boring, beautiful thing. I made a duplicate folder with the original names untouched, then wrote a one-page index in plain language, what each file was, when I had saved it, and why it mattered. No insults, no theories, no family history, just records. That little index became my spine for the next week. I needed that spine. Who was worse here, the father who signed the lie, or the brother who smiled through it? Father is one, brother is two. My father showed up at my apartment 2 nights later. I had never given him a key, which suddenly felt like the best decision I had made in my 20s. He knocked 3 times, hard. I looked through the peephole and saw him standing in the hallway in his overcoat, phone in one hand, jaw tight. I did not open the door. "Riley," he said, "open the door." I stood barefoot on the other side, heart punching my ribs. "I am not having this conversation in person," I said. His face changed through the distorted glass. "You are being ridiculous. Put it in writing. I am your father." That sentence used to open doors inside me. That night, it did not. "You are also the person who accused me from a fundraiser stage," I said. He lowered his voice. "You have no idea what you are interfering with. Then explain it in writing. Stop saying that." "No." The hallway went quiet. Then he said, "Your brother is about to lose everything because you need attention." I almost opened the door then, not because I believed him, because the old training flared. Fix it, calm him, make it stop. Instead, I looked at the chain lock. It was small, cheap, and suddenly sacred. "I did not create the records," I said. "I kept them." His eyes hardened. "You have always resented Camden. I resented being used. You were part of this family. I was unpaid labor, with a last name." He stepped closer to the door. "You think some clerk is going to save you?" "No," I said. "I think the timeline is going to tell the truth." He laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You sound like your mother." That was meant to land. For years, my father used my mother as a warning label. Difficult, ungrateful, cold. A woman who left, instead of standing by family. When I was younger, I heard that, and promised myself I would never be like her. At 28, standing behind a locked door while my father tried to turn my pain into disobedience, I finally wondered what she had survived before she packed those suitcases. I said, maybe she kept records too. He went silent. Then he stepped back. "This is your last chance to stop embarrassing us." There it was. Not hurting us. Not dividing us. Not even costing us. Embarrassing us. My father's first instinct was not remorse. It was reputation control. I said, "You wanted me silent because the records were louder than I was." He stared at the door like he could still make it open by being angry enough. Then he left. I sat on the floor afterward and shook so hard my teeth clicked. The body does not understand boundaries as quickly as the mind does. Part of me still expected punishment. Part of me still thought refusing my father would make the world end. But the world did not end. The hallway went quiet. My phone stopped ringing for the first time that night. The next morning, I sent a short message to Noah. "Are you okay?" He replied after 10 minutes. "Dad came home mad. I stayed in my room." I wrote, "I am sorry you are in the house with this." He replied, "I am not sorry you are doing it." I cried again, but differently. After that, things accelerated. The donor questions became harder for my father to contain. Elaine Porter asked for clarification about authorship of the program materials before renewing support. Another donor asked whether restricted funds were being tracked separately. A board volunteer requested clean copies of the grant packet. None of these people were attacking my family. That was the point. They were doing what serious adults do when documents do not match speeches. My father called it a smear campaign. Camden called it sabotage. Aunt Marcy called it heartbreak. The paperwork called it unresolved. A week before the next review date, Camden asked to meet. I said no. He said it was about Noah. I said he could write it down. He sent nothing for 2 hours. Then he sent a message that began with, "Fine. Fine. Dad is willing to release your final pay if you sign something saying there was no intentional misrepresentation. Your bonus is more complicated because it was never formal. Noah's deposit can be handled once the transfer moves. You are holding everyone hostage." I read it twice. Then I printed it. He had written the whole shape of the lie in one paragraph. They would pay what they already owed if I softened the record. The bonus was suddenly informal. Noah's deposit depended on the transfer they were trying to protect. I was the hostage taker, because I refused to pretend the hostage did not exist. I did not reply right away. I made tea. I took a shower. I folded laundry. I gave myself 1 hour, so my answer would come from the adult in me, not the wounded child. Then I wrote, "I will not sign a false statement. My final pay, the promised bonus, and Noah's education deposit should not be contingent on my silence about altered records or disputed authorship." Camden answered, "You are unbelievable. I saved that too." The review happened on a Thursday morning. I was not in a courtroom like people imagine. There was no grand confrontation where I stood up and gave a speech that made everyone gasp. The reality was more ordinary, and because it was ordinary, it was more frightening. There were papers, there were questions, there were people with tired voices trying to understand why a family business transfer had supporting documents that did not line up cleanly. I was present only where I was asked to be present. I did not pretend to know more than I knew. I answered what I could, provided what I had, and said when I did not know. That mattered. My family had built its power on sounding certain. I had to build mine on being accurate. Miss Alvarez was there in the hallway, moving between windows with folders tucked under one arm. When she saw me, she gave me a brief nod, not warm, not cold, professional. It studied me. My father arrived with Camden and Aunt Marcy. They looked coordinated. My father in a dark suit, Camden with his donor smile, Aunt Marcy with a cream scarf and red eyes, already prepared to look wounded. Noah was not there. Thank God. My father saw me and walked over like the hallway belonged to him. "This has gone far enough," he said. I did not answer. Camden stood just behind him. "You got what you wanted," he said. "People are asking questions. Congratulations." I looked at him. What I wanted was my pay, my work credited correctly, and Noah's deposit protected. Aunt Marcy made a small sound. "Riley, this is not the place." I almost smiled. For years, there had never been a place. Not the office, not the house, not the fundraiser, not email, not the group chat, not the courthouse hallway. There was never a place, because the truth itself was what embarrassed them. A staff member called my father's name before he could answer. They went in first. I waited outside. There is a particular kind of silence that happens in institutional hallways. Shoes on tile, distant printers, someone coughing behind a closed door, a chair leg scraping. It is not peaceful. It is suspended. I sat with the folder on my knees and thought about every time my father had told me I was too sensitive. Too sensitive about Camden taking credit. Too sensitive about late-night calls. Too sensitive about being unpaid. Too sensitive about family jokes that landed like warnings. Too sensitive about Noah. It turns out, sensitivity is just pattern recognition, with a bad reputation. When they came out, my father's face had changed. Not broken. My father was not a man who broke in public. But the performance had slipped. His mouth was tight, and the skin around his eyes looked gray. Camden looked furious. Aunt Marcy looked afraid. The transfer was paused. Not cancelled. Not judged in the sweeping way people imagine when they want stories to be neat. Paused. The supporting documents had unresolved questions. The program authorship and compensation timeline created concerns. The connection between the grant narrative, asset valuation, and internal payment dispute needed clarification before the transfer could proceed. That was enough. The machine my father had tried to rush finally slowed down. Outside the clerk's window, Camden turned on me. "You have no idea what you just did." I said, "I know exactly what I did." "You think this makes you important?" "No." "You think donors will choose you over us?" "No." "Then what is this?" I looked at my father, then at Aunt Marcy, then back at Camden. "It is a record catching up." My father stepped closer. "You were raised better than this." I shook my head. "No. I was trained better than this. There is a difference." Aunt Marcy whispered, "Riley." I turned to her. "All those times you told me to think about how this looks," I said, "you never once asked what happened." Her lips trembled, but no words came. That was the thing about my aunt. Without guilt, she had very little vocabulary. Camden tried one more time. "You wrote some drafts. You are acting like you built the whole business." "The draft did not remember family loyalty," I said. "It remembered timestamps." His face flushed. My father said, "Enough." But it was not enough anymore, because he was not the only person in the room with authority. For once, his tone did not close the conversation. For once, the hallway did not rearrange itself around his comfort. That day did not fix everything. My final pay did not appear magically. The bonus did not become simple. The business did not collapse overnight. But consequences started moving. The transfer delay forced questions my father could not answer with a speech. Donors asked for corrected records. Camden's title disappeared from one revised packet. Denise stopped being the only person who knew payroll categories had shifted. Noah's deposit was separated from the disputed account before the next deadline. When Noah sent me a screenshot of his student portal marked deposit received, I cried at my resale desk by the window. Not because I had beaten my father, because Noah had a door. If receipts beat reputation, type proof. After that, my father wanted a family meeting. I agreed to one meeting, but not at his house, not at the office, and not without a written agenda. I chose a small conference room at my consulting office after hours. My father hated the glass walls because there was no family history inside them for him to weaponize. He opened with his donor voice. "Riley, we are all under strain. Things were said. Mistakes were made." I asked, "What are you apologizing for?" He said, "For the pain this has caused." "That is not an action," I said. Then I listed what I wanted: corrected authorship, my final consulting payment, a written explanation of the payroll change, a real resolution of the promised bonus, written confirmation that Noah's deposit was separate, and no more claims that preserving records meant I attacked the family. Camden called it a hostage list. "No," I said. "I came with the damage itemized." My father said I was trying to rewrite family history. "I am correcting business records," I said. Then Camden finally said the quiet part. "If we correct the authorship, donors are going to ask why." "Yes," I said. My father snapped. "That is exactly the problem." "No," I said. "That is exactly the consequence." The correction happened in pieces, because other people were watching the documents now. The grant materials named me as the original drafter. My final consulting payment arrived. The bonus became a negotiated amount my father called goodwill. Noah's deposit stayed separate. The transfer remained paused until revised documentation could be reviewed. Camden's public leadership announcement lost momentum. My father lost something he valued more than money: control over the room. Noah left for Northbridge in August, and I drove him there myself. Before I left, he hugged me in the parking lot and said, "Thank you for not letting them make me the reason you stopped." On the drive home, I did not call the family group chat. I did not send my father a picture. I let the silence ride beside me. It did not feel like punishment anymore. It felt like room. My father sent one final email saying he hoped time would help me remember what family meant. I replied that I would communicate in writing about remaining business records, but private reconciliation could not start until the harm was named clearly. He did not answer. 5 years earlier, that silence would have destroyed me. This time, I made coffee, opened the window, and sat at the desk I had bought with money I earned from clients who knew my name. The old house stayed silent behind me. This time, I did not chase it. This story is fictional and created for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not legal, financial, or professional advice. It is a story about self-worth, personal boundaries, and protecting yourself from manipulation when someone tries to turn love into leverage. Confusion protects people who profit from your silence. Clarity is not cruelty. A record is not betrayal. A boundary is not revenge. For years, silence meant I had been abandoned. Now silence means I am free. If you are angry for Riley, say it in one word. If this reminds you of your own family, share one word or the whole story. And be honest, forgive them, or keep the boundary.